12 years ago, this clip of Roger Federer's scientifically accurate explanation of a double bounce went viral. He had a calm and friendly chat with the chair umpire but lost the point despite being right.
Yeah, but for me it looks like he came under with the racket.
Yeah, I know, but the ball can bounce that top spin way. It's the only way you can push it down into the court first.
For me it looks like he came just under. Probably I missed it, but for me it was like that, Roger.
I agree it was close, but the result was obvious that he didn't hit it the right way.
Why wasn't the call overturned? Because an umpire's call is final. So Federer kept his composure and moved on. But here's the thing. What if I told you that the technology that could have accurately determined that it was a double bounce has existed for over 2 decades? That the error could have been avoided entirely? You see, tennis...
Check this out! Boom!
...is a sport of beautifully unexpected surprises. Of unbelievable parallels across generations. And margins? Finer than a grain of salt. But it's also a sport that's incredibly resistant to change. And when the line between winning the most important match of your career or having a meltdown for losing it could come down to a few millimeters or a bad judgment call, things can get ugly.
Look at me! I'm talking to you! Answer my question! No, get off what? We need a clown for the circus.
Moments like these have become emblematic of a larger issue in the sport. Tennis has an umpiring problem. Bad line calls are far from a unique problem. In fact, in many ways, they've become a problem of the past. But in an era of 4K broadcasts, slow-mo video replays, and dozens of state-of-the-art cameras for line calling systems like Hawkeye and Fox 10, erroneous calls shouldn't happen. Yet they do. Before we get into the types of bad calls in tennis and the impact of AI, we need to understand how officiating in a pro tennis tournament works.
Ready?
There are 4 types of officials in a tennis court. Line umpires, who are responsible for line calls during the match. There are usually 9 line judges at any given time on the court, with 2 teams of linespeople being rotated every hour. Then there are chair umpires, who oversee calls made by the line judges. They ensure that the right calls are being made, the rules are being followed, the scores are announced, and that the time is being kept.
Time's running out. He still gets love here.
Then there's the referee or the supervisor.
Supervisor.
An additional official who ensures all the rules are followed and mediates any conflicts between a chair or line umpire and a player. Finally, there's the chief umpire or tournament referee, who oversees all officiating during a tournament. They are responsible for all umpires at an event and are the liaison between the tournament and tennis officials. Let's get something out of the way. Chair umpires have an incredibly difficult job. And with so much happening on a tennis court, it's undeniable that mistakes will happen. However, the lack of accountability when they do, along with a profound lack of implementation of available mechanisms of correction, are a chief concern as tennis grows and evolves as a sport. Much like the trophy ceremony at the end of a tournament, there's a certain rhythm and flow in how contesting a bad call has unfolded in the last few decades. The umpire or linesman makes a bad call. The player will go to the umpire to complain that it is, in fact, a bad call.
You can't be serious, man. You cannot be serious! That ball was on the line! Chalk flew up!
And the umpire will on almost every occasion deny the player's point of view on why it's a bad call.
There's a bit of a spread, Mr. McEnroe. That was a good call.
Sometimes players are calm and move on. Sometimes they rage and throw a fit. More importantly, whenever the referee or supervisor is involved or asked to interfere, they say the same thing each time. It's the umpire's call. In even the most blatantly bad calls. Until it's a player's mistake, that is. In which case suddenly it is in fact the referee's call. There's a big gap in how players' mistakes are handled and how a tennis official's mistake is handled. If a player can be punished for poor judgment, why can't an official be held to the same standard? The most clear example of this was in Dubai earlier this year, when Andrei Rublev was defaulted in his semi-final match against Alexander Bublik. After shouting at a linesman for an allegedly bad call, the linesman complained to the chair umpire, who then roped in the tournament referee and handed Rublev a disqualification for supposedly calling the linesman a moron in Russian. Crucially, the referee did not confirm that Rublev used abusive language towards the line judge, rejected Rublev's account refuting it, brushed aside his pleas for a video review, and handed him a default, which even his opponent protested against. While the default was upheld, The forfeiture of prize money and ranking points are reversed after Rublev appealed the decision. While that does reverse some of the damage, he still got defaulted based on the unconfirmed word of a linesman, and the referee's refusal to confirm what he had said led to several players and pundits within the sport calling for the implementation of video reviews in tournaments. It's undeniable that there has been a heavy-handed approach to penalizing players for bad behavior, and in many cases, players certainly cross the line and deserve fines and punishment. But as Holger Rune correctly points out,
answer my question. Do you get punished when you do a mistake?
there isn't much accountability for a bad call by an umpire. The only instances I can think of are when Mohammad Layani was suspended for giving Nick Kyrgios a pep talk at the 2018 US Open, and when Damian Steiner was banned for giving unauthorized interviews about the 2019 men's Wimbledon final in Argentine news media. Some might think that these punishments are excessive, but on the flip side, the same happens to players too. Like when an umpire handed Kachanov an audible obscenity warning for saying the word in Spanish, after which Kachanov said about a dozen times.
If you go to toilet, you go to it's a bad word.
We need a clown for the circus.
What does that achieve exactly? And who does it serve and protect? Do the viewers even care? At the 2004 US Open, a then 22-year-old Serena Williams was not only battling her compatriot Jennifer Capriati for a spot in the semi-finals, but also error-prone line judges and an absent-minded chair umpire. A slew of bad calls led to Williams losing several crucial points, moments that could have swung the tide of the match in her favor. Instead, she was sent packing home in what was the most infamous example of bad line calls in tennis. While Hawkeye hadn't been commissioned for use in competition, the technology was being tested in broadcasting, and it helped display the sport's dire need of a technological intervention for a pervasive problem, changing tennis's umpiring landscape forever. Hawkeye was introduced in professional events in 2006, with each player receiving 3 challenges for line calls per set. But what exactly is Hawkeye? And how does it? Hawkeye uses a dozen incredibly high-quality cameras that can capture footage at 360 frames per second. While it may be referred to as a ball tracking system, it's more akin to a path predicting system. Hawkeye can predict where a ball will land with remarkable accuracy, with only a 2.6mm margin of error. The technology has been a saving grace in not only tennis, being used in football and cricket, it has also improved significantly since its initial introduction. The line calling technology space within the sport has witnessed a lot more competition, with Fox 10 touting a zero margin of error. The key difference between the two technologies is that Fox 10 uses real bounce data, unlike Hawkeye, which predicts where a ball will land. It uses 40 to 45 cameras for each court compared to 12 for Hawkeye, and it also uses 10 lasers to help determine the position of the ball. While it is more expensive to set up, its zero margin of error is massively important when the line between winning and losing is razor thin. Despite the obvious benefit line calling technology possesses, its use has actually led to a new problem. Data suggests that Hawkeye has helped improve many types of line calls, but crucially, errors in calling close serves have increased by nearly 23%. The kinds of errors have also changed, shifting from calling good balls out to calling bad balls in. It therefore makes sense that electronic line calling, which uses the same technology as Hawkeye or Fox 10, has been used in several high-profile tennis events, including the US and Australian Open. Electronic line calling will also come into effect for all ATP events next year, and while it will certainly help mitigate the issue of bad line calls, crucially, the WTA, the French Open and Wimbledon have made no such guarantee. The lack of electronic line calling is compounded most during the clay season, which hasn't really used any form of line calling in the past. It's led to an increase in bad calls in crucial moments that can and has changed the course of the match. In this season alone, there have been so many dramatic instances because of bad calls that Tennis TV put out a 20+ minute video detailing almost all of it. So here's a quick refresher. This bad line call in a crucial moment during Sinner and Tsitsipas' semi-final match in Monte Carlo, then again in the round of 16 when Mohammad Layani missed where the ball landed, and he did the same thing again 2 weeks later with Dan Evans in Rome. It goes beyond bad line calls. Here's Rune getting an unsportsmanlike conduct warning for motioning the crowd to be quiet with his hands. Really? Something that could explain the increase in bad calls, particularly on clay, is the unavailability of Hawkeye and the resulting lack of practice. With Hawkeye being in use for decades and electronic line calling becoming more and more ubiquitous, linesmen are disappearing, and chair umpires don't have to see each ball, where it lands, whether it was in or out, as closely anymore. The system calls all of those shots. Transitioning from that to having to scrutinize every single ball is one that can create panicky calls in high-stakes situations. Will that ever change? The accuracy of Hawkeye on clay is probably one of the biggest obstacles that was hindering electronic line calling to be the standard. Since clay is a surface that moves over time, it's a lot harder for Hawkeye to be as accurate. With it being calibrated every 30 minutes, the court has moved enough in that time for more errors to creep in. Which is why using Hawkeye during broadcasts seems disingenuous. But also what's overlooked is that unlike grass and hard courts, all shots leave a mark on the clay. If a computer is saying the ball is in, but the mark looks out to everyone, what call would you make? The Heilbronn Challenger, held concurrently with the French Open this year, used electronic line calling on clay for the first time. All thanks to Fox 10, who cited their unique approach in determining line calls being one of the main reasons for why they were able to bring this technology to the surface. While only time will tell if real bounce data will be the kingmaker in conquering the accuracy mountain, that alone is just a small part of the umpiring problem that's plaguing tennis. Bad judgment calls disrupt rhythm and hampers a smooth flow of play. Even someone like Iva Ashteraki-Moore, a chair umpire with a reputation close to perfect, is prone to glaring errors. At the 2023 Australian Open, Moore made a terrible judgment call at a very crucial moment in this second round matchup between Andy Murray and Thanasi Kokkinakis. With Kokkinakis leading by 2 sets and a break of serve in the third, Murray was fighting hard against an inspired opponent who refused to yield.
You're kidding me!
In the third deuce, Ashteraki-Moore issued a time violation warning to Kokkinakis, who was in the midst of his service motion. A heated argument ensued.
What is that shit? You cannot call that when I'm waiting for a call out. I was there, I waited, he said something, I go again. You're not waiting for shit. I'm waiting for him to stop talking.
I have to say, I think he's absolutely right. He started his motion.
And sure enough, the Australian was broken back in what was admittedly the point of the tournament. While no one can definitively tell if Kokkinakis could have gone on to win the match, the inability to challenge bad judgment calls is something of a travesty, and the sheer number of poor calls is frustrating to watch as a fan. Ranging from literally calling the wrong score
I didn't hear anything.
to not registering that the ball was in play,
Mi bola ha sido dentro. Yo la he vuelto dentro, pero ¿qué partido estás viendo, Carlos? Mi bola ha vuelto dentro.
or that a linesman's call didn't affect a player's return of serve, or that the frame never made contact with the ball. Poor judgment calls of this nature have been the case for decades, but what makes this so much more infuriating is that players have been able to challenge line calls for close to 2 decades. If wrong line calls can be overturned, why can't the same be done for bad judgment calls? Especially in scenarios where it can be confirmed that the umpire's call was not the right one. Having that option is productive and helpful in not only eliminating errors from the sport, but in building trust between players and officials. Instead, we are left with an endless list of flawed officiating and judgment calls fraught with errors. For now, that is, because there's a simple solution to basically solve this mess once and for all: VAR, or video reviews. Initially introduced at the Next Gen finals, the technology was trialed at the ATP finals. Remember that frame call? That was overturned because of a video review. While other tournaments in the men's and women's tour do not use the technology yet, the US Open became the first Grand Slam to introduce video reviews last year. Players can review double bounces, challenge line calls, review foul balls, hindrances, footfalls.
Oh, he's been called. There it is.
Yeah. That's what he has to do. He can't call it before you hit it.
And scoring errors.
Just
Much like Hawkeye challenges,
one challenge
For the tournament.
each player gets 3 video reviews per set. It not only makes the sport more error-free, it also brings back the fan engagement that came with Hawkeye challenges. something that has been sorely missing in events with electronic line calling. The result? The US Open had one video review, with the technology coming to the rescue and no, not really actually. It didn't work. The system just failed.
VR is not working. What you are watching on the TV up here comes from TV, so original constant.
We need a clown for the circus.
Tennis as a sport has always been resistant to change. Scenarios such as this one where it may seem like a no-brainer. While traditionalists might rightfully argue about the real-life consequences of replacing people with AI systems, people in favor of change will point to the numerous consequences of erroneous calls which can change who walks out of the tournament as a winner. AI alone will not be enough to solve tennis's umpiring problem, but it will certainly help the sport come one step closer to fixing it once and for all.